Karin Jironet is a Jungian psychoanalyst and a Sufi elder, traditionally called Murshida. And she has recently published a book entitled Sufi Mysticism and Jungian Psychology. In her writings, she explores the transformative potential of breath, imagination, and love. She works worldwide with individuals and organizations, guiding them to greater consciousness and purpose in all their activities. In our dialogue, she will represent the side based on her Sufi experience and study of the works of Hazrat Inayat Khan, and I, the psychological, based on my experience in Jungian psychoanalysis and my study of the works of Carl Gustav Jung. We will try to create in this interplay a piece of counterpoint that may yield a third way for our time. In this opening conversation, we will focus on states and stages of the path to self-realization and individuation. Karin will begin.
Thank you, Murray. Yes, states and stages, and particularly stages for today, based on Hazrat Inayat Khan's Sufism. Hazrat Inayat Khan was a famous mystic and musician from India, born 1882, making him only 7 years younger than Jung. He was born into a Muslim family with a great musical reputation in India at the time. And music was also the leading thread for the teachings that Inayat Khan brought to the West in 1910. You can think of him as a translator of ancient Sufi wisdom into Western contemporary language. The stages that I will talk about today are concentration, contemplation, meditation, and realization. So let's dive straight into it. Concentration is a practice, and the function of this practice is to create presence of mind, to focus only on one object. In the long run, it's also a way of learning for that moment that you have the concentration active to what the effects are of not thinking about yourself, which is, of course, a difficult thing to do. But if you are in Holland, as I am right now, you might want to choose an object such as a tulip to concentrate on. You look at only this object and you observe it, and you try to make an imprint for your inner eye of this tulip. Concentration is basically a way of sorting out your mind in a single way. Then comes contemplation, the next stage, in which instead of simply observing the tulip, you look at it more like, hey, what can you tell me? You create a relation, you try to listen to the tulip. You contemplate the meaning of this tulip. What does it tell me? And you reflect on, why does it tell me that? You engage with the tulip. Then comes meditation, and you put your object or word or emotion or whatever you chose to concentrate on. You put that away, and you instead concentrate or become aware of being itself, just existence, being. Meditation can be objectless, or it can be an invocation of the divine, as is the case for Inayat Khan, in which the meditation serves as a bridge into your essential being, into yourself. And with that, we come to the final stage, which is not really a stage, but because realization means, in essence, a transformation of your life. It's not an achievement, it's not an activity, it comes to you, if you're lucky. You need to wait for the grace of realization of yourself. And that is what realization is about. This can take some time. There might be instances of clarity that goes beyond your regular consciousness and opens up to what is perceived as a higher dimension of consciousness. That's this journey, and now it's with tremendous joy and excitement that I may introduce Dr. Murray Stein, you. So, as I think most of our listeners know already, Murray Stein is one of the most influential Jungian psychoanalysts of our time. He was a foundational figure of the C.G. Jung Institute of Chicago, and now a senior training analyst in Zurich. He's author of numerous books and articles that have been foundational for our understanding of what Jungian psychoanalysis is. Not only for Jungians, but for a much broader audience. And he's been informative for our comprehension of the Jungian way of thinking of the psyche and the soul. So he has also recently written plays with Henry Abramovich, in which the latest being Twilight at Bollingen. So, Murray.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the individuation process from the Jungian perspective. C.G. Jung, as Karin said, was born in 1875, so 7 years older than Inayat Khan, and he died in 1961 at the advanced age of 86. Inayat Khan died at a very early age, 44, about half the lifetime of Jung's. So Jung had twice as much time on Earth to develop his ideas and write about them and teach and so on. And he had a large impact on the people around him and the culture, and continues to have an influence on people all around the world. Actually, the Jungian organizations are growing and expanding in all parts of the world, and his writings are now becoming very well known in foreign lands. Inayat Khan was a kind of missionary to the West, and brought Sufi teachings to America and Europe in the teens and 20s. Jung was very interested in the East, and tried to incorporate some of the Eastern ideas into his psychology. But what I want to speak about very briefly is the individuation process. that is at the core of Jung's thinking about what it is to become a human being, a full human being. Karin spoke about self-realization, what it is to become, and she will say much more about it, what it is to become a fully realized human being from the side of Sufi teaching. I'm going to talk about what it is to become a full human being from Jung's side, which is a psychological side, less spiritually oriented, more grounded in, I would say, in history and time. When Jung speaks about the individuation process, and he's called a full lifespan developmental theorist, he speaks about how the psyche develops, that is, our subjectivity, our interiority, develops and expresses itself throughout a full lifetime from birth to death. So assuming you live to his age, 86, you've got quite a lot of developing to do in that period of time. And he divided the lifetime into two parts, the first half of life and the second half of life. And for Jung, the main task in the first half of life is to develop what he called an ego, which is the center of consciousness. That doesn't mean to become selfish, to have a big ego. It means to develop a kind of stable sense of identity from which you can deal with the world and you can function in society, in your relationships, in your work, and you have a kind of stability of outlook and participation in the world. Now, that stage involves what we call separation. So I'm going to speak about three stages: separation, integration, and realization. Separation means that the ego has to be separated from, that is, the sense of I. Ego is just a word that means I. It's a Latin word, it means I. And when it was translated into English, instead of using I, the English translators used the Latin word ego. The Germans didn't. They used ich and just I. But in English, we call it the ego. And ego is just your sense of I. And that has to be separated from its, what Jung called participation mystique, its identification with other people in the world around, or objects. You can identify with your mother, with your father, with your siblings, with idealized people, with teachers. And gradually you have to develop a sense of self or ego that is separate from all that, that can relate to it, but not become one with it, not become unified with it. So this process in the first half of life of separation is very important for development, for psychological development, and we call it ego development. And then when that is done, there is the next stage, which usually arrives around midlife, around the age of, in Jung's case, it was late 30s. And Jung went through a big midlife crisis in which a process of integration has to take place with what has been left behind or what has been left out. So what is left out in this first part of separation? There are aspects of the unconscious that are left out, aspects of the self that are left out. We call those shadow. The shadow is left out of the conscious awareness of the ego identity. The shadow are all those things that we don't want to be, that we reject, that we're separated from, and we project onto other people, typically find scapegoats. We have to come to terms with that and integrate those parts of ourselves that have been left out. That's called shadow integration. Doesn't mean you become those things, but you become aware of those same impulses and behaviors and desires in yourself that you see so often in other people and criticize and disown. And then there is the anima and animus feature, the part of gender identity that you don't claim when you develop an ego identity. If you're a boy, typically you develop a sense of masculine ego, male ego. If you're a girl, typically a feminine sense of self. But there's a part of the wholeness of your psyche that is left out. The other we somewhat associated to gender, somewhat not, masculine or feminine aspect. So we all have both masculine and feminine within ourselves. We tend to identify with one side and leave the other out. And then that has to be recognized within oneself. And that's a long process in the second half of life, finding the feminine within, the anima, or the masculine within, the animus, in the second half of life. That's a huge undertaking, and integrating that. So that's the second phase of the individuation process, integration, coming to terms with and recognizing those aspects that are lie in the basement of the house of the psyche, and you dig them out of the basement, and you go deeper and deeper into those levels, and you come upon what Jung called the collective unconscious, which is what we share with all human beings. In the collective unconscious, we are all made up of the same stuff, of the same material, of the same fundamental archetypal patterns and images and ideas. We just give them an individual twist in our lives, in our cultural lives, and in our individual lives. And when we come into contact with that and begin to integrate that, we begin to develop a sense of oneness with all that is. So the individuation process moves from developing a sense of separate self, just an I unto itself, to integrating what has been left out, that is expanding the sense of self and subjectivity, to another much greater expansion, which Jung called the unus mundus stage of individuation, where we become related to all that is. There's a kind of oneness feeling that develops, and capacity, I would say a greater capacity for compassion. And I think the goal of the development, we will talk about that later, in a sense is very similar from between Jung's view of development, the individuation, and the Sufi and other Eastern developments of Buddhism, a development for a capacity for compassion that exceeds what is usual among our fellows. Most people are not, they're compassionate to a certain extent. As long as other people treat them well, they're compassionate with them. If they start mistreating them, they're not compassionate. They want to strike back. True compassion is another level of feeling based on oneness. Even if somebody hates you, there is an area of subjectivity in which you hold in common. They're also a human being. They may have weird views and perspectives and cultural features, but at another level, we are one. So that sense of oneness develops a capacity for compassion with all that is, including animals, ecology, ecological awareness, plants, the planet, unus mundus. That's I would say the most expansive and the highest level of the individuation process, as Jung writes about it. So I would say, Karin, coming back to you, and now we can have a bit of a dialogue. The way that you describe in concentration, contemplation, meditation, realization, is a means to what should I say? A means to foster or facilitate or accelerate what Jung called the process of individuation. Would you agree with that?
Yes, certainly. Naturally, with my own personal inclination, I would must stop at unus mundus, unity of being, Vahad al-Wujud, in Sufi tradition. So I do agree that there is such an overlap in terms of where does this all lead to. And the practices and texts and activities that lead up to such an experience might differ a bit, but in essence not too much, I believe. As you say, it's part of our common humanity. And your question about how there is an overlap, was that the question? How is there an overlap?
Yes. What you describe in those four steps seems to be a kind of intensification or a method for accelerating or deepening what Jung called individuation. Jung often leaves a lot to nature. You know, he says we individuate whether we know it or not, whether we want to or not. It's just a part of people getting older. But we can become conscious of it. But I think what Sufism adds is a conscious participation and acceleration or intensification of this process toward what Jung called unio mentalis and unus mundus, these higher levels of consciousness and feeling.
Yes, I agree. It's seen also by Inayat Khan as a natural process in essence, but that making a choice for it, taking initiation, step in onto this path and follow through on it, is what accelerates that natural development, and accelerates and deepens. You see it more quickly in other people as well. You relate to nature in a different way, much more consciously. Animals, of course, you communicate with. And people might have that naturally, but to do it consciously is still of another order.
Exactly. Now, these men lived, Jung died 75 years ago, I think it was, or 65, something like that. We just celebrated his 150th birthday in Zurich this past year. And Inayat Khan died over 100 years ago. So they lived in very different times in one sense. Inayat Khan experienced a tremendous dislocation when he came from India to America as a kind of Sufi missionary. He felt a calling or a mission that he had to fulfill. He didn't particularly want to, as you write in your book, but he felt commissioned to do that, impelled to do that by what we'd call the self, some higher instructions being given to him. And Jung traveled to the East a couple of times, went to India one time, spent a few months there, went to other parts of the world, America, Africa. But they lived in very different times. I think what we are finding today is that bringing these two together is much easier than they had in their time. I mean, it was quite new to them and very foreign and sort of, oh, what is this? But in the meantime, so much has been done. Can you say something about the Sufi movement since Inayat Khan's death in 22 or so?
Yes, it's. I mentioned initiation earlier, and the initiation means that you step into a tradition of wisdom that's been cultivated by teachers since the beginning of time, I would say. And that's also the choice, that this fits with me, and here I can learn and experience and contribute. The Sufi movement is, in a certain way, a contribution in that sense. But with the silsila, it also means that in America and worldwide, the current head of the Sufi organization is Pir Sia, who in turn is the grandson of Inayat Khan. So that has to do with tradition, lineage, bloodline, if you like. So it's not a mixture of a little bit Buddhism and a little bit Islam, a little bit No, it's really quite specific in terms of this is our attitude. This is how we want to cultivate our being, our presence in the world. And the Sufi movement and Inayat are bodies of people who have that same training. So it sort of enforces the collective consciousness and unconsciousness, I would like to add, talking about shadow. But in any way, it's a way of relating as a group of individuals on the same path. It has something. I'm not very much of an organizational person myself, as you can hear.
Well, Jung's, I would say the movement that Jung founded is somewhat similar, somewhat different. None of Jung's children or grandchildren, to my knowledge, I think there was one grandson who became a Jungian analyst, died at quite an early age, however, but it isn't that kind of tradition. It's passed on from analysts to analysts and, teachers in the institutes and so on. But people from many different cultures participate and also are leaders. The present president of the International Association of Analytical Psychology lives in Uruguay. The one after that, who will succeed her, lives in Lithuania. I was the president for a while. There have been Americans, Europeans, South Americans. A Japanese was a president for a while. So the leadership is quite different, and the tradition is more, I would say, multicultural. So it isn't a tradition like Sufism is really a tradition.
Yes.
Is there willingness among the Sufi people, leaders, and so on, to dialogue with people like me, Jungian psychoanalysts? You are both. I mean, you combine the two
Yes.
in your being. But is that, are you the only one who has been able to do that or wanted to do that?
I think in America there are Sufis who are very Jungian in a true sense. And I know Pircia was in Europe, I think 2-3 years ago, and really wanted to meet up with you. He asked me to call. Can I mail myself? So I hope that will happen one day.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
But aside from that, the past and the tradition, what we're doing here is trying to see in these conversations if there is some way to maybe extract elements from each, Jungian psychology on the one side, Sufism on the other, and create a third thing, which would be, from the Jungian side, a sense of individuation that is perhaps more, emphasizes more the spiritual side than a lot of Jungians do. Jungians tend to be very grounded in everyday life, relationships and, I would say the ego side of life rather than the self side, as Jung writes about it.
Well, if you
we'll
look
talk
at
about that some more later, but I think what we want to develop is something that speaks to people today who are also searching for the spiritual as well as the psychological, that kind of combines these things, right? And creates a third possibility, if you will, between the two traditions.
Certainly. I think more and more people have an urge to find ground, solid ground somewhere in the world at this point in time, as we see how the world as it used to be, I should say, no longer exists in reality. We think it does, of course. A house is still a house and the car is still my car. But on a more subtle level, it is no longer as it used to be. And one feels that, and that can create some certain stress or anxiety or pressure that you can't really find an expression for. But if you concentrate on an object, let's say, you're back in control. You're back in, and this is my mind. And if you sit down with a psychoanalyst who understands you, feels how you are confirmed in your identity, also in a subtle way, not so much with ideology based, certainly not,
No.
but intimately personal. This can become a friend if you want to.
Yes.
And that you come back to.
In the world today, loneliness is a huge problem in the world today. You don't have to be lonely. You can have a tulip as your friend. The piano can be your friend.
Absolutely.
The objects around you, animals, nature. Yeah.
Yes, but you need a little bit of help to get there. And that's where I think a session with you, for instance, is enormously meaningful in that sense. Always.
Yes, we're going to speak about that in one of our future conversations. The experience of being with an analyst or a Sufi master. We want to go into that more deeply in another conversation. But I think what we want to offer to the contemporary world is a way to collect the mind, isn't it? I mean, it's so scattered, it's so fragmented, and anxious. There's a huge amount of anxiety, fear, anger in the world. Can we come up with an answer? Not a final answer, but a way to deal with that using our methods.
Yes, so a leap away from loneliness and boredom and isolation, and rather into sort of, oh, it's possible, I'm enthusiastic, I'm related, I know what I'm here to do, I have a purpose. It's a huge step, but it can happen. It certainly can. And it's not difficult if you know how to do it.
To summarize this conversation, could you just go through those 4 steps again quickly?
Yes.
And then I will do a bit of a summary from my side, and we just to kind of wrap it up and give the listener something to hold on to.
Yes, thank you. I will do my best. Concentration is a practice, a step towards what you want to achieve, which is to know yourself and truly, truly realize that this is me. And you accelerate your journey towards that point through, for instance, now in the first place, concentration, which is that the mind zooms in on one object and stays with that object without any other thoughts or emotions. This is difficult, but you can learn to do it. And the object can be a feeling or a dream or an image that you have, that you think, I really want to concentrate on that. While you do that concentration, you also start the process that leads to the goal, which is to forget this false self, the persona which you spoke about, to forget that that is it. And that is who I am. And really to spend time on realizing in contemplation, which is the next stage, to contemplate, how am I? How do I relate? How do I comprehend the other? Does that do something to me? how I experience and perceive the other. What comes up, wells up, what are the consequences? Then in meditation, you do something else, which is to not concentrate, but invite a felt sense of being. The being, God, is of course a bridge to your higher self, the self with a capital S. But if you don't have that inclination, it doesn't help you. So what serves you, serves you. And in meditation, for however long you do it, you open up to the essence of your being and start to bridge into, or the bridge between, or the border, if you like, between yourself and the rest of it starts a little bit to loosen up. And then you move towards what you say, you start to feel a taste, a glimpse of unus mundus, which is then in realization in Sufi terms, where you know that you are no different than anything else. And I don't say anyone else, but anything else. The plants, the animals, the weather, etc., etc. But you have to have a strong ego to go there, because otherwise you will be absorbed. There are terms for that, I suppose.
Well, I think that's a good point. You have to have a strong ego to go there. And we'll discuss that some more as we go along. Just to summarize very quickly, the stages of individuation, the first half of life, it is to build up that kind of an ego that's strong enough to go there, to develop a sense of self. And this is a very complicated project. You go through stages in the first half of life, adolescence, from childhood to adolescence, young adulthood, each has its own issues and challenges, but you hope through all that to develop this strong sense of self that can then integrate the opposites, what has been left out, the shadow, the anima, the animus, and eventually then to also touch into those deeper levels of the unconscious, the collective unconscious, and where one experiences this unus mundus. So 3 stages, I would say, 3 steps: separation, integration, and what we could call self-realization.
Unity.
And I think there are a lot of overlaps in what we are discussing between Sufism and Jungian psychology. So now we have described some features of the path of self-realization and individuation, and the stages, and the steps. In our next conversation, we will focus on methods. We've touched on some methods. There are more methods, but we'll really want to focus on the methods for moving towards self-realization and individuation. From the Sufi side, self-realization; from the Jungian side, from individuation. And how this work is done in Sufism and Jungian psychology. How do we actually do it? So join us for that. And we will continue the Counterpoint duet as we have begun here. So see you again in the next conversation.
Thank you.